authors and entrepreneurs. There are two people. I'll ask him only two questions and maybe one question, so we have time for three. One is, how does one discover one's calling? Is there a playbook to that?
Well, the way I showed you, this way I know, in my case it was lucky I had a father and a mother who were always having a dialogue between making a living and making a life. And what my father had in mind in making a life was to see if I could stumble onto a passion, a purpose. Every human being needs a purpose. And the job of a teacher and a parent is to and it's sometimes not finding a purpose, it's creating a purpose.
It's sometimes creating a purpose. Mr. Gurcharan Das, when I was preparing for this session with you...
Sorry, one point I want to make is that a very important part of making a life and finding a purpose is books. We are here at a book festival, so I might as well say it. But for me, when I was flitting around at with my mother desperate in India, and even Harvard getting a little worried that I was doing Chinese ceramics, Renaissance painting, a course in Beethoven and Sanskrit and all that it was that romance with the liberal education and the reading of books. There are only 100 books. By the way, Google 100 books, top 100 books. It's a very important program. The liberal arts program in an undergraduate university in America is based on these 100 books. And you don't have to go to Harvard or Princeton or anything. Just read those 100 books and you will be preparing to make a life.
Beautiful. Now, Mr. Gurcharan Das, you achieved so much. You have, in some way, you seem to be happy with your life, fulfilled, satisfied. What is your bucket list? Is there a bucket list that you have?
By that you mean?
A list of things to do? Still?
Yeah, I think that is the problem, Anurag. Making lists and remaining busy. While you're doing that, life is passing you by. Seneca, the Roman poet, said, "While I was busy, life passed me by." Now, too much busyness is the problem. So in a writer's life, for example, there are two parts. One is that part where the self disappears and you're writing away from 6 in the morning and you forget yourself. And the other part is going to a literary festival and meeting people and waiting at airports, making to-do lists. Will the car come on time in the morning? And all that, buying a ticket, all those things. So my suggestion is, don't make lists. Don't be busy. Don't be busy. I don't know what Seneca meant about life passed me by, but I have a sort of kind of a gut feel, which I can't articulate what he was talking about. And that's why I'm today, maybe, I made a success in 2 careers, but there's a gut feeling that there's a discontent. Discontent that maybe, have I been able to grasp life? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, for an outsider, it feels that you achieved, which you have, being a successful CEO, being a celebrated author, and making an imprint on life. We'll take 1 question or 2 questions, depending on how short they are. Is there a question? The lady here and the gentleman will take.
Good morning, sir. So it was wonderful listening to you. I'm Dr. Vidushi Sharma. I'm the head of the corporate communication at New Delhi Institute of Management. So my question to you is, you started your discourse, your speech with happiness. Like, what is happiness according to all of us or you? So I have been a student of literature throughout. And I have read T.S. Eliot. You talked about impersonality. When the writer starts writing, he is not himself. he's into writing, you know, totally about the world, and he's
The
lost.
book is being written.
Yes, yes, book is being written. That's a wonderful thing to say. And you talked about making a life instead of making a living. So that is what your dad used to suggest. But then in your whole discourse, I would just like to understand your view on the fact that happiness is to do something for the needy and then forgetting it. What do you say? I mean, when we actually want to lead a life, yes. How do we contribute to the society to lead a happy life? That is what I would like to
Say that again. How
do we contribute to the society, to the needy, to lead a happy life?
Right, right. Well, I think if all human beings work with a sense of purpose, frankly, as I said even about the market, don't make that when you do something even for profit, you're benefiting others in some ways. You may be benefiting yourself too, but you're also benefiting others. So I think perhaps in the same way, if all human beings are happier, working with some sense of purpose or with you make the world a better place.
When one purpose fades, that really held you so tightly in your 20s and 30s, how do you discover a new purpose, or how did you do that?
If you're, say that again, if you're in your 30s?
When you have a purpose, and you have a purpose in your 20s and your 30s, you're a householder. When you have a purpose in your 20s and 30s and that grips you, and that no longer grips you in your 40s, how do you discover a new purpose? And how did you do it personally?
Well, as I was telling you, I'm not sure I've understood your question. I'm sorry, this mic is not so good. But anyway, I think I got the point that many of us most of us work with a sense of, you know, we work hard, we get good grades, we get a good job, and then we have a big car, a big house, a nice wife, nice children, send them to good schools, and then in the 40s it hits us. Is this what life was all about? I think that's what you're trying to say, and you seek a purpose at that point. And I think this is, in my case, I had the same thing. I had a midlife crisis, really. I mean, I had to go and see the doctor, to be very honest, before I came to see Dr. Manmohan Singh back home, back here. But I think this is the story you've narrated, is the story of the successful executive in the new India, and it's all over the world. And so it's important really to live your life, ideally realizing that you could die in 3 weeks or 3 months. If you think you'll die in 3 months, then you have to ask yourself, you know, what do I do in these 3 months? And how we spend our day is how we spend our life. And I guess the whole thing, as I've narrated, is to live with a sense of awareness, an examined life, as the philosophers say. And in some cases you can be lucky, like I was with my father, who was always reminding me that life was not only about making a living, it was about making a life. Okay.
Good morning, sir. My name is Samaresh. Sir, you talked about make a life, not just a living. How important is growth mindset in today's times?
Well, that is a growth mindset, isn't it? When you're making a life. You are without, you know, it's, today's MBAs they have a timetable. By this age I'll be a director, this age I'll be vice president, this age I'll be president of the company. And that's fine. But too much planning is also a problem. It's the to-do lists of Annurag. And just busyness is part of our problem. And the thing, time's up, I think it's telling me. So I'm not sure, maybe we can take this question offline.
So a lot of startup founders, they struggle to identify the right talent, especially on leadership positions. How to identify those leaders, sir, especially if attitude is the criteria? Is there any filtration where we can identify that this set of people who could be the right aligning with the DNAs of the startups? How to identify the right talent based on
the right people at the top.
Yes, especially for startups.
Yeah, well, it's the same, whether for a startup or a non-startup. I would say get Kamble's. Hire for attitude and train people for skills. In other words, you can change, you can give people skills, but you can't give people attitudes. Attitudes are set when you are 3 years old. You know? So that would be my suggestion. When you recruit, don't ask the person what he knows. Don't ask the person about his skills. I mean, you're hiring somebody at the top of the class. You're hiring a fellow from IIT, IIM. The guy knows. She knows. What you want to know is how does she have determination, humility, integrity. Those are the things that ultimately are the determinants of making a life. Okay? And if you're, yeah, thanks. What I'm saying is that if you're lucky to have somebody like Kamble, what you find with a guy like Kamble was that person very quickly infects others, becomes a role model for others. Imagine a security guard from Akola district, metric pass, became a role model for vice presidents of a company.